Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mastering English Podcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sam.
We are kicking off a deep dive today that tackles, I think, the one struggle every single person listening has faced.
Oh, for sure.
It doesn't matter if your goal is to finally reach B2 fluency in English, launch that side business, or just consistently hit the gym. We all know the feeling.
That feeling of starting super strong, right? You have this massive burst of motivation.
Yes. And then, 3 days later, you're totally burned out.
It's that universal cycle. You set a huge, wonderful goal, say, studying English grammar for a full hour every single day.
Or running 5 kilometers, yeah.
And then, when that initial excitement wears off, the energy just vanishes.
It really does. You start feeling overwhelmed, you miss one day, and suddenly you're right back in that I'll start tomorrow loop.
It's so common.
And that feeling is just so frustrating because you want the result, but you can't seem to keep the momentum going.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to move past that temporary feeling of excitement and give you, well, a proven psychological roadmap for achieving lasting, almost effortless change.
We're going to show you how to build real discipline so you never have to rely on that fleeting motivation ever again.
We've gathered some of the best research on behavioral science and self-control.
And we're going to break down the science of why self-control feels so hard and how designing simple systems, not just focusing on outcomes, is the real secret to becoming consistent.
If you are ready to trade that motivational burnout for rock-solid consistency, you are absolutely in the right place.
Definitely.
But first, before we jump into the science of success, we have a quick request for you.
We do.
If you appreciate these deep dives that give you a shortcut to being well-informed, please take a second right now to subscribe to the Master English podcast and hit that like button.
It truly helps us bring this research to more learners just like you. And thank you for that support.
It means a lot.
Now, let's get straight into the fundamental framework for how real, sustainable transformation actually happens.
Okay.
We can start by looking at the process as a journey that has 3 very distinct phases.
Okay, so let's unpack this journey. When we talk about transformation, we often just talk about extremes,
Right, like the moment you decide to change and then the moment you achieve the goal.
But the research is super clear. Lasting change follows this really predictable sequence.
Yeah, a kind of formula. It's what we call the M to D to H principle.
Motivation to discipline to habit. That's it, right?
That's the one. That sequence is the critical insight.
And it explains how you go from just an excited idea to a state where the behavior requires almost zero mental effort.
Precisely. The whole point is to get to that third phase, habit, as quickly and efficiently as you can.
So let's look at those phases in detail. Phase 1 is motivation. This is the fun part, right?
This is the best part, is that initial emotional energy, the excitement when you download all the study apps or buy new running shoes.
I've done that so many times.
We all have. It's fantastic starting fuel. It launches the change, but it is, by its very nature, temporary.
Okay, so after motivation comes phase 2, discipline.
And this is the challenging part, the middle ground, the bridge.
Right.
This phase requires you to take consistent action even when you don't feel like it.
Ugh, the hard part.
It demands you push through boredom, discomfort, and that initial lack of visible results.
And this is where most people, including me sometimes, just quit.
It's the great filter.
And if you make it through, phase 3 is the destination.
The destination, habit.
So here, the behavior has become, what, automatic?
Completely. It's integrated into your life. It's relatively effortless and unconscious. This is the ultimate goal.
The major trap, then, is that people mistake that initial high of motivation for something that's going to last forever.
They rely way too much on the feeling, and that leads directly to what researchers call motivational volatility.
Okay, so why? Why exactly is motivation so unreliable? Why does that initial fire always seem to fade away?
Well, because motivation is, at its core, an emotion. And emotions, they naturally fluctuate.
Right. No one feels happy or excited all the time.
Exactly. The research calls this a few things. First, there's inspiration impermanence.
Impermanence meaning it doesn't last.
Right? The spike in excitement you get from a new goal or a new idea just inevitably declines over time. The novelty wears off.
And the dopamine hit that comes with the newness goes with it.
It does. That new English course book is only exciting for the first chapter or so.
So true.
And second, there's feeling-based fragility.
Okay, what's that?
If your action depends directly on how motivated you feel, your actions are going to be incredibly inconsistent.
Because your feelings are inconsistent.
Precisely. Once the newness is gone, you hit that difficult stage where you have to study, but you're just not getting that rush anymore.
It sounds like motivation is highly sensitive to the real world, too. Like, if
Hmm.
I have a bad night's sleep or a tough day at work,
Oh, absolutely.
my motivation for my evening study session is just gone, destroyed.
It is. It has high environmental sensitivity. And trying to maintain that high motivation all the time takes immense cognitive and emotional resources.
It's exhausting.
It is. And behavioral scientists have noticed this creates something they call action paralysis.
Action paralysis. That sounds serious.
It's a key concept. It means that even a tiny, minimal increase in the effort required can dramatically reduce whether you actually follow through on something.
So if a task goes from easy to just slightly hard,
Your compliance, your follow-through, it just drops off a cliff.
wow. So if that initial emotional energy is so fragile and so temporary, that is exactly why discipline is the essential bridge we need.
It has to be. It has to carry you across that gap between starting and finishing.
It's the critical function then.
It is. Discipline is crucial because it allows action to happen regardless of your current emotional state.
Okay, that's a big idea. The research calls this feeling action decoupling. Right?
Exactly. Decoupling, just meaning to separate or unlink.
So you're separating your emotional state from your behavioral choice.
You are.
That's a massive concept. It means
Yeah.
I don't have to wait until I feel like practicing my English pronunciation.
You don't.
I just have a system that makes me practice even when all I want to do is doom scroll social media instead.
Precisely. This is where discipline leverages what are called pre-committed plans.
So you decide ahead of time.
Yes. You decide ahead of time what you will do and when you will do it. And that plan overrides your momentary feelings, your reluctance.
And you keep going because you start to see yourself differently.
You do. You sustain the effort because you start to base your continuation on your identity,
You become the kind of person who practices English daily.
or the kind of person who always shows up for the training session. It becomes part of who you are.
And this internal ability, this power to push through the hard part, even when it's boring, that has a famous psychological name.
It does. It's grit.
Ah, grit. We
Right.
hear that word a lot.
Angela Duckworth's research on this is famous. She defined grit as the capacity to maintain effort and interest toward long-term goals, despite setbacks, boredom, or, and this is crucial, the absence of immediate feedback.
I think that lack of immediate feedback is the killer. It's so true.
It really is.
If I practice English vocabulary today, I don't immediately feel smarter. The results are weeks or months away.
And grit is what bridges that delay.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the most interesting part is what happens under the surface in your brain during this discipline phase.
What's going on up there?
Consistent action, even if it feels forced by willpower, it actually triggers physical changes in the brain. Researchers call it experience-dependent plasticity.
So my brain is physically changing.
Yes, you are physically strengthening the neural circuits you use.
So even if I feel like I'm struggling through my 15 minutes of grammar review, I am literally building stronger pathways in my brain,
You are.
which make that 15 minutes easier to do tomorrow.
Exactly. The neurological insulation, or what scientists call the myelin sheath, it forms around the circuits you repeatedly use.
And that strengthens the pathways.
It strengthens them, and it initiates something called process chunking, where individual actions combine into these automatic, swift sequences.
So you stop having to think about every single step of the process.
You do. It becomes one fluid motion.
That is incredible. So discipline is literally wiring your brain to make the behavior more efficient,
That's the science.
which finally leads us to the liberating destination, habit.
And once that behavior shifts into a habit, it provides what's known as the cognitive liberation effect.
Cognitive liberation. I like the sound of that.
Behavioral scientist Wendy Wood, who studies habits extensively, she confirms that about 43% of what we do every single day is repeated in the same context.
43%.
Almost half. And it requires minimal conscious focus and decision-making.
Almost half of our day is automated. That is a staggering number.
It is. When a behavior becomes truly automatic, it frees up a massive amount of mental energy. You no longer need willpower for that specific action.
That's willpower independence.
Exactly. Your conscious attention is liberated. It's freed up to focus on more complex tasks, like tackling advanced English debate topics.
While your morning routine or your daily vocabulary review just happens automatically in the background.
It's the ultimate form of efficiency.
Okay, now we know the journey, but let's go back to the hardest part.
The discipline phase.
Yeah. Why does consistency feel so exhausting? Why do we feel so mentally drained when we try to be productive? the science gives us a powerful explanation, right? Through the strength model of self-regulation.
Yes, this model has driven decades of research, and it explains that self-control, kind of like a muscle, operates by consuming a limited energy resource.
And when that resource runs low, we enter a state called ego depletion.
That's the term.
So self-regulation, let's be super clear on this.
Hmm.
We're talking about our ability to manage our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, all based on the goals and standards we set for ourselves. Is that right?
Exactly. It's the ability to alter your response, to resist the impulse to eat the chocolate, or to force yourself to focus on a boring report.
And having strong self-control isn't just a minor benefit, is it?
Not at all. Research has linked it to success across almost every domain you can imagine.
Like what?
Higher grades, better job performance, improved health outcomes, stronger relationships, and even greater longevity. It is truly a vital skill for a successful life.
But this strength model suggests that if we use this skill too much, the fuel tank runs low.
It does.
So what exactly happens to our behavior when we're in that depleted state?
Well, when that top-down conscious control is reduced, we see an increase in impulsive, disinhibited, and often self-sabotaging behaviors.
So our ability to stick to our own standards just dramatically weakens.
It plummets.
Can you give us some specific examples from the studies?
Certainly. The effects are really wide-ranging. Depleted individuals show increased aggression. They're more prone to sexual misbehavior.
Okay.
And one of the most relatable findings from modern life is impulse purchasing.
Tell me about that.
Depleted people are willing to spend significantly more money for the exact same goods than people whose self-control resource is intact.
That explains so much. It's why I always order extensive delivery and buy things I don't need after a marathon editing session.
That's the mechanism.
My brain is basically just screaming, I deserve this, and I don't have the energy to think about the consequences.
That is precisely what's happening. Depleted dieters eat more snack foods, like candy.
Right.
People trying to manage substance use consume more alcohol or cigarettes. Furthermore, depletion severely inhibits inhibition.
Inhibition, so our ability to stop ourselves.
Exactly. It means depleted people have difficulty stopping themselves from engaging in unwanted behaviors. They're more likely to ignore instructions, use curse words, or take ethical shortcuts.
So our ability to say no to both big and small temptations is literally weakened when our mental energy is low.
It's a resource issue.
It's not a lack of morals, it's a lack of regulatory energy.
And intellectually, performance suffers. Depletion impairs effortful, high-level thinking processes like logical reasoning and complex decision-making.
But what about the easy stuff?
Well, automatic ingrained processes continue normally, and this is a crucial finding.
Okay.
Depleted individuals often revert straight back to their established habits, good or bad, because they lack the energy to override them with a conscious, better choice.
That detail is so important for our listeners. It means that if your habit is to immediately grab your phone when you sit down,
Which it is for many of us.
being depleted means you will always grab your phone even if you plan to study English.
You fall back to your default behavior.
Yeah.
Now, let's move to where the science has evolved, because that initial strength model, it had a flaw.
Oh, interesting.
The early, simple idea suggested the brain literally runs out of fuel, like a car running out of gas.
But that's not quite right.
Modern research paints a more complex and, frankly, a more hopeful picture. The idea that we are completely empty is now considered inadequate.
So what's really happening?
The depletion effect we observe are actually better understood as conservation effects. We don't stop because we run out. We stop because our brain tells us we might run out.
Conservation. That implies there's still fuel left in the tank, but the body is strategically choosing not to use it.
That is the key shift. Researchers introduced the idea of a central governor.
A central governor.
Think of this as an internal watchdog, a regulatory mechanism that monitors your energy consumption rate.
Okay.
It cuts back on energy output not when the energy is gone, but when the consumption rate is seen as unsustainable over the long term.
It's a brilliant analogy, like a warning light coming on in your car saying, you're using too much battery too fast. Shut down unnecessary programs.
It's a survival mechanism. Consider the analogy of a marathon runner. It's a classic example from the research.
Yeah.
A runner conserves physical energy even when their muscular reserves technically remain. They slow down to protect against a catastrophic energy failure later in the race.
So it's a preventative measure.
It is. And this conservation mindset explains why depletion effects can begin after seemingly minor exertions, like a brief 5-minute task that requires high focus.
The body just registers that fuel is being used at a rate that can't be maintained.
And it signals fatigue. The central governor is encouraging you to conserve.
That totally changes the framing. It's not a moral failure or a sign of weakness, it's a biological survival strategy kicking in.
Exactly.
We just need to figure out how to trick our brain into thinking it's safe to spend a little more energy.
And this brings us to the famous role of glucose.
Ah, sugar.
The evidence that glucose is relevant is robust. Low blood glucose is indeed linked to poor self-control, and ingesting glucose reliably counteracts those depletion effects.
So having a sugary drink can actually help.
It can. There are studies showing that judges granting parole show much higher rates of approval right after consuming glucose, like a mid-morning snack or lunch, compared to immediately before the break.
So the immediate interpretation is that the sugar is fixing our willpower, right?
Yes, but the modern, more nuanced interpretation is more interesting. We know that modern, well-fed people still have plenty of glucose reserves in their body.
So the tank isn't actually empty.
No, the glucose intake isn't necessarily filling an empty tank. It's acting as a powerful signal to that central governor.
A signal.
Ingesting glucose signals that the body is receiving fresh fuel, that energy is on the way, which encourages the governor to allocate more glucose to the demanding task.
And that overrides the internal feeling to conserve resources.
It does.
So glucose is like a temporary permission slip to keep spending energy on that difficult task, like studying English grammar.
That's a great way to put it.
That is a crucial distinction. It proves the capacity for self-regulation isn't exhausted. People are simply conserving, and we can manipulate that decision.
And here is the most hopeful finding, which reinforces that M to DDH model we talked about.
Okay.
The research confirms that self-control strength can actually be improved, just like a muscle. It's not a fixed trait you're born with.
Okay, so how do we practice it? What kind of tasks can improve this self-control muscle?
Studies have shown that consistent practice of self-control, even on minor unrelated tasks, improves your overall regulatory capacity.
Give me some examples.
Things like intentionally improving your posture every time you notice it slumping, or forcing yourself to switch to using your non-dominant hand for simple daily activities.
Like opening doors or brushing your teeth.
Exactly. Those acts require a continuous override of your automatic behavior.
So forcing myself to use my left hand to open my study notebook, even though it feels super awkward, is literally building the mental capacity I need to focus on a difficult English listening exercise later on.
That's exactly it. Consistency, however small and seemingly irrelevant, is physically building your neurological capacity for future success.
And that makes the discipline phase progressively easier in the long run.
It does.
So we know the discipline phase is difficult because of that central governor and the conservation instinct.
Right.
Therefore, we can't just rely on trying harder. We need a real strategy.
Better system.
Which brings us to the core lesson of this entire deep dive, focusing intensely on systems, not just on goals.
This is perhaps the single biggest shift in mindset you can make. Goals are fantastic for setting a direction, but systems are the actual engine that makes progress happen.
There's a great quote from James Clear on this.
He says if you completely ignore the goal and focus only on perfecting your system, the score takes care of itself.
I love that. It tells us the daily process is what truly matters, not the far-off destination. Can you give us a really tangible example of that distinction?
Sure, let's stick with our learning theme. The goal might be get a high score on the IELTS exam in 6 months.
Okay, that's the target.
The system, however, is this series of specific, daily, repeatable actions you take. Like listening to a portion of the Mastering English podcast during your commute, practicing vocabulary with flashcards for 10 minutes at lunch, reviewing one complex grammar structure every evening.
And maybe hiring an accountability partner for weekly feedback.
Exactly. The system is the process you commit to every day, regardless of how you feel about the big exam.
I used to think the goal was the most motivating part, but you mentioned that focusing too heavily on the goal can actually cause significant problems.
Yeah, there are 4 major pitfalls of a goals-first mindset that we have to be aware of.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, winners and losers have the same goals. This is the big reality check.
Everyone wants to win.
Right. Every team wants to win the championship. Every student wants perfect fluency. The goal is universal. It's not the differentiator.
Oh, what is?
The system of continuous small improvements, the better practice routine, the better feedback loop, the better daily execution, that's what separates the successful from the unsuccessful.
The goal is just the signpost. The process is the actual work. What's the second problem with goals?
The second problem is that achieving a goal is only a momentary change.
Oh, okay.
Think about cleaning a messy room. The goal is to have a clean room. You achieve it, feels great for a moment.
But if you don't change the sloppy habits, the system that created the mess,
Like leaving things out or putting off laundry.
the room will be messy again within a week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You solved the symptom, but you left the underlying cause completely untouched. True improvement requires fixing the process.
So the results I see are just lagging indicators of my system. If I fix my input process, the output will eventually reflect that.
Precisely. You fix the inputs and the outputs fix themselves.
What's the third problem? This one is subtle, you said.
It is. Goals restrict your happiness. A goals-first mentality often creates this rigid either-or scenario.
I will finally be happy once I reach B2 fluency.
Or, I'll take a break after I hit my sales target. This forces you to continually delay satisfaction. It creates so much unnecessary pressure and stress.
That mindset makes happiness conditional. What happens if the path is longer than I thought, or if I never hit that exact target?
You remain unhappy. But with a systems-first mentality, you can fall in love with the process itself, rather than demanding a specific outcome.
You can be satisfied just because you successfully executed your study routine today?
Yes, you can be happy because your system is running, even if the final result is still far away. That acceptance of the process is incredibly liberating.
I love that. Being satisfied just because you showed up and followed the routine. What's the final pitfall?
The fourth pitfall is that goals are at odds with long-term progress. They often create a destructive yo-yo effect.
Like what?
Think of a student who studies intensely only for the final exam. Once the exam is over, they stop studying completely.
Because the motivator, the deadline, is gone.
It's gone. The purpose of building a system is to continue playing the game indefinitely. True long-term thinking is goalless thinking, focusing on endless refinement and continuous improvement.
Not just a single accomplishment or finish line.
The system becomes its own reward.
So if systems are the key, the next practical strategy is making those initial actions so incredibly easy that we overcome that central governor's instinct to conserve energy. This is the strategy of tiny habits.
This is the practical bridge over that action paralysis we discussed earlier. If the effort required is too high, the brain will conserve energy and avoid the task.
So the strategy is to define a minimum viable action?
Yes.
What does that look like in practice?
It means making the habit so small that you simply can't say no to it, even on your worst day.
So if my overwhelming goal is 60 minutes of English study?
The minimum viable action might be committing to just 2 minutes of practice daily.
If your goal is to write a book?
The MVA is writing 1 sentence. The key is to start small enough that consistency is almost guaranteed.
And over time, that tiny, consistent effort compounds into colossal progress.
It does.
And the magic is that once you start those 2 minutes, momentum often carries you further. You might think, well, I already got my notebook out. I might as well read for 5 more minutes.
You tricked yourself into starting.
You did.
You activated the behavior loop with minimal resistance. And this leads perfectly into how we strengthen that loop.
By making those habits attractive.
Through positive reinforcement.
This is where we use the reward system, right? Formerly known as contingency management.
Exactly. Discipline doesn't have to be a miserable, boring slog.
So what is contingency management?
It's simply the rule that states you must complete action X to receive reward Y, with no exceptions.
And this works so powerfully because the brain loves rewards and craves dopamine.
It really does.
We often hear about dopamine in the context of addiction, but it's really the chemical of motivation and seeking, isn't it?
That's right. Dopamine is a chemical messenger that's heavily involved in motivation, anticipation, and learning.
So your brain rapidly works to reinforce that action to dopamine cycle.
Yes. And by skillfully linking a required, disciplined, action-like intense focus with an immediate positive reward, we can leverage this neurological system to strengthen our healthy habits.
So if I reward myself for completing a difficult 2-hour work block by watching a short favorite YouTube video,
Then your brain starts to associate the discomfort of the work block with the dopamine hit from the video,
you are consciously pairing the required action with an immediate reward.
making it far more likely that you'll stick with the entire system over the long term. This is how you transition from forced discipline to automatic habit.
Okay, now we are moving into the concrete, Super practical tools you can implement today to support your new systems.
And protect your limited self-control energy.
If you want to achieve that deep focus, that flow state, you absolutely have to design your environment to eliminate distractions. We have 7 actionable steps here.
And remember, focusing is a deliberate act that consumes energy, which triggers that conservation response.
So if you allow distractions to constantly interrupt you,
You're forcing your brain to repeatedly override the central governor, which is just exhausting. These strategies minimize those energy leaks.
the first one is about managing the constant flow of information. Use asynchronous communication.
This is so vital for deep work. It means proactively turning off notifications and setting the clear expectation that you will reply to emails and messages only at certain scheduled times.
For most non-emergency stuff, it's perfectly acceptable not to respond immediately.
It is. And to make this efficient, when you do send a message, make sure it includes enough detail, clear action items, and specific due dates.
Right, to eliminate that endless back and forth.
Exactly. Which wastes everyone's time and focus.
Tip number 2 is one that destroys most people's focus. Batch. Check everything.
It is the absolute enemy of productivity, that seemingly harmless urge to check something real quick.
An email alert, a news headline, a social media update.
It adds up so rapidly. The research shows that this context switching can result in a massive 40% productivity loss over the course of the day.
40%. And what's that painful statistic we found? When you get distracted, how long does it take to fully get your focus back?
It takes, on average, a shocking 23 minutes to get fully back into the zone, or deep focus after a significant interruption.
23 minutes. Think about that time cost. If you check your phone 4 times in an hour, you've essentially destroyed the focus for that entire hour.
Even if you only spend a few seconds actually looking at the phone.
Wow. So to solve this, you need a system.
Yes. Set predetermined times, say 10:30 a.m. and 3 p.m. for checking email and social media.
You can even use technology like browser extensions or phone settings to block those sites at other times.
To enforce that batching behavior.
Okay, tip number 3 is crucial for tackling those big, intimidating tasks, like writing a long essay in English.
Yes, set a timer.
Breaking down large tasks is key because the brain avoids massive exertion.
Right. When a task feels overwhelming, use the clock to define small, manageable milestones. The most famous example is the Pomodoro technique.
25 minutes of focused work, then a 5 or 10-minute break.
It respects the central governor's need for conservation while still making sure you're making progress.
Next, especially for those in collaborative environments, we need a signal. Set a do not disturb signal.
If you're working in an open plan office, or even studying in a busy library, you need a way to signal to others that you're in deep focus.
Putting on headphones is the classic example.
It serves both to block noise and to clearly communicate that interruptions should only be for genuinely urgent matters.
Tip number 5 addresses a common source of lost focus: your calendar. You have to protect your calendar.
If you leave your calendar as an open free-for-all, others will book meetings that fracture your day, stealing critical focused work time.
So you have to be proactive.
Deliberately block out non-negotiable meeting-free zones. Or use scheduling tools like Calendly to force all meetings into specific batched windows.
To reduce those cognitive switching costs.
Exactly.
Tip 6 is about using motivation, but strategically. Set goals and add urgency.
While we emphasize systems, deadlines still serve an important psychological function.
They do.
Setting reasonable, firm deadlines helps prioritize tasks and creates a necessary sense of urgency that aids focus. The key here is reasonable. Overcommitting will just overwhelm you.
And finally, perhaps the most difficult challenge in the information age: the distractions we create for ourselves. Create quiet spaces in your head.
In this era of information overload, we're often the biggest source of our own distraction.
We fill every spare moment with input.
Listening to news, scrolling feeds, watching clips. Spreading our mental capabilities so thin, you have to cultivate the skill of discerning what information you take in and when.
You have to retain control of the information faucet instead of being drowned by the constant noise.
And this is achieved through practice and self-monitoring.
Which leads us perfectly into the next crucial strategy: self-monitoring. You can't control what you don't measure, right?
Absolutely. Self-monitoring, the introspective observation of your own behavior, your emotions, your thoughts, it's the absolute cornerstone of self-discipline.
It's the process by which you become the scientist of your own behavior.
Which empowers you to adjust your systems proactively.
How does this reflective process actually work psychologically? What's the feedback loop?
It functions through a continuous four-stage feedback loop. It starts with awareness, just cultivating an acute observation of your daily actions and thoughts.
That's just noticing.
Yeah, tracking how much time you spend on a task or simply acknowledging every time you chose a distraction over your study plan.
Then comes the moment of truth.
Yes. Then comes evaluation, where you judge your observed actions against your goals or standards.
For instance, reviewing your time log and realizing you spent 3 hours browsing articles unrelated to your English learning.
Instead of the 2 hours you planned for structured study.
And that evaluation then leads to the practical change.
Correct. That naturally leads to adjustment, restructuring your routine to mitigate that procrastination trigger. If you notice, you're always most productive right after lunch.
You reschedule your most cognitively demanding task like complex writing to that time frame.
And the fourth step is reinforcement, rewarding the desired behavior to increase the likelihood it will happen again.
And finally, repeated self-monitoring enables reflection.
Which reveals deeper, often surprising patterns, like noticing your productivity drop significantly whenever you get less than 7 hours of sleep.
That reflection step is key for those qualitative insights. It helps you see the context surrounding your habits. And I know there are so many tools now that can help with this.
Technology can be an amazing ally. For qualitative insights, digital journals like Day One or Journey are excellent.
And for gamified support.
Habit trackers like Habitica or Habitable make consistency feel like a game, which is great for those early discipline phases.
And for managing that limited resource, time, there are apps for that too.
Absolutely. Apps like Rescue Time automatically track how you spend your digital time, giving you honest insights. And others like Forest encourage focused sessions by tying your session to a visual consequence.
Your virtual tree dies if you leave the app to check Twitter.
It's surprisingly effective.
Okay, since we know the brain is so easily fooled by that dopamine hit of rewards, we need to make sure we're using positive reinforcement correctly.
Yes, the crucial do's and don'ts of rewards, or contingency management.
The primary purpose of these guidelines is to make sure your reward system reinforces the new dopamine cycle, the good habit, not the old one.
We have to be really surgical in our reward design.
Let's start with the big mistake people make. Don't reward bad behavior with the bad behavior.
This is so critical, and it often happens subconsciously. Do not reward a week of successful dieting with an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Right. Don't reward a week of hard work by binge-watching the exact streaming service you were trying to avoid.
The reward should be completely separate from the undesired behavior.
Yeah.
You're trying to train your brain to associate dopamine with cues other than the self-sabotaging action.
So what should the reward be? Do you choose rewards that are healthy, self-caring, and out of the ordinary?
Think experiential rewards. A massage, a weekend trip, a new item of clothing, or a ticket to a concert.
These are great because they reinforce a new pattern of self-kindness that isn't reliant on the very habit you're trying to break.
Exactly.
Another critical, don't. Don't make normal self-care a reward.
Things that are necessary for your health and performance, like a full night's sleep, a healthy meal, or a hot shower, should be non-negotiable parts of your system.
They shouldn't be contingent on achieving a goal.
No. The reward needs to be a little something extra, a treat that registers as positive reinforcement for the effort.
And we must make sure our systems are crystal clear. Do make contingencies specific and quantifiable.
They should be black and white. No room for interpretation or negotiation with your inner conservationist.
So instead of, I'll reward myself for studying more, it should be,
I will reward myself with a new book after tracking 150 minutes of focused English conversation practice in a week. Measurability removes all doubt.
I love this next recommendation. Focus on making habits, not just abstinence.
Abstinence-based goals can be psychologically tricky because they focus on what you can't do.
It's often far more effective to reward positive actions that add value to your life.
Like rewarding yourself for writing 3 sentences of English every day, rather than rewarding complete abstinence from, say, all sweets.
Which can feel restrictive and just set you up for failure.
It can.
And finally, scaling is essential to keep us motivated for long-term systems. Do make your rewards scale with your accomplishments.
You have to match the rewards value to the size of the accomplishment. A small token or a coffee for hitting a 2-week streak of tiny habits.
Versus new professional headphones for successfully completing an entire year of daily study practice.
Exactly. Scaling keeps the long-term goals exciting while still providing those necessary dopamine hits early on.
And one last piece of advice from the research is the value of external support. The idea of going it alone is a myth.
It really is. Discipline is hard work, and accountability partners are crucial for staying consistent.
Friends, study groups, even professionals.
They provide external structure and make you less likely to make exceptions. Sharing your goals and your system with a witness helps keep you mindful.
And it prevents that internal voice of conservation from talking you out of the action.
Totally.
This deep dive has been incredibly dense and so insightful. It's moved us far beyond the simple idea of just try harder.
I think so too.
Yeah.
We now understand the science of why consistency feels so exhausting.
The main takeaway is absolutely clear. Sustainable, long-term success comes from understanding that transformation moves from motivation to discipline to habit.
And that we fall to the level of our systems when our energy is low, not rise to the level of our goals.
That's the key. Don't just rely on those fleeting bursts of initial motivation. Use that initial energy to build the system, define the rules.
And make the minimum viable action non-negotiable.
Speaking of small actions, let's leave you with a micro challenge to implement today.
I like this.
Choose one new habit. Maybe listening to a portion of the Mastering English podcast during your commute, or reviewing just 3 vocabulary words and define the minimum viable action.
What is the smallest, easiest amount of time you will commit to it without fail today? Just 2 minutes.
Do that.
Yeah.
Just start there. And as you commit to that minimum viable action, remember this powerful, final, provocative thought that connects discipline to your future self.
The research proves that self-control, unlike many passive skills, is fundamentally trainable. It can be improved through deliberate practice, just like strengthening a muscle.
So exercising self-control, even on minor tasks like improving your posture,
Or forcing yourself to use your non-dominant hand for simple tasks.
it improves your overall regulatory capacity on completely unrelated, demanding tasks over time.
Yes, consistency, however small, is physically and neurologically building your capacity for greater future success.
That is amazing. Discipline today is literally constructing the neurological pathways for effortless success tomorrow. That's a future worth working toward.
It is. And if you found this discussion helpful and want more deep dives based on the best behavioral and psychological research available, please remember to subscribe to the Mastering English podcast and like this episode.
I'm Alex. See you next time.
And I'm Sam. Bye.